Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Kayla Halls, and I am delighted to be chairing this webinar. I have worked in baby rooms in the US and UK, and I am currently working as a research fellow on the Nuffield Foundation funded project, Achieving High Quality Provision in the Baby Room of English Nurseries. So as you can imagine, with all of this baby experience, I am really excited to hear from Dr. Nicola Kemp, Dr. Josephidou, and Polly Bolshaw about their Froebel Trust funded project, A Froebelian inspired nature pedagogy in urban baby rooms. So a bit about each of our presenters now. Dr. Nicola Kemp is part of the Froebel Trust executive team. She is also a visiting reader in education for sustainable futures at Canterbury Christ Church University. Dr. Josephidou worked as an early years teacher for many years, and now she is a senior lecturer in early childhood and an associate head of school for research and knowledge exchange in the School of Education, Childhood, Youth, and Sport at the Open University. And then we have Polly Bolshaw, who previously worked as an early years professional in a Sure Start Children's Center. Now she is a senior lecturer in early years at Canterbury Christ Church University and is undertaking a professional doctorate at the Open University, which is focused on babies' perspectives of the outdoors. So Nicola, Joe, and Polly have been working together on Froebel Trust-funded research about babies and toddlers outdoors since 2019. In this webinar, they will be presenting the findings of their latest project, A Froebelian-inspired nature pedagogy in urban baby rooms. This project explores how settings in urban contexts can develop their outdoor spaces to enhance biodiversity alongside practice that supports nature engagement for the youngest children. I am really looking forward to hearing all about this tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you all to share your work.
Thank you so much, Kayla. I'm just going to give a little bit of an introduction to talk about how our presentation is going to work this evening. So it's divided into three parts, and I'm going to start off by reflecting on one of the key focuses in our work, the invisibility of babies outdoors and why this is an issue. You'll have an opportunity to see for the first time part of a short film called Tiny Humans Outdoors, which includes a series of images developed by an artist, Alice Marshallino, in response to our research. I'll then share some of our research findings about the importance of regular outdoor and nature-based experiences for babies. Joe will then tell you about how we developed our babyNENE framework and toolkit. And finally, Polly will introduce our Babies Outdoor website and some of the free resources that you can find there, including the downloadable toolkit, which we hope that you'll want to try out for yourselves. It does also include all of our research reports and papers, so if you do want to follow up anything that we've said this evening, then do take a look on the website. As Kayla's already said, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end, so do pop them into the Q&A at any point, and we'll make sure there's plenty of time to respond to your questions. Next slide, please, Polly. Thank you. So our first report, and this goes back more than 6 years now, was called Where Are the Babies? And this was because when we started to look at the internationally published research, we found that even in papers where they said that they were about the youngest children, babies generally weren't considered. In fact, one of the key findings across all of our research has been that babies are almost entirely absent from discussions about the outdoors and nature engagement in particular. Natural environments are perceived to be places where babies just don't really belong. In our narrative literature review, we found that this is because the outdoors is seen as risky, and particularly natural elements are seen as being a health and safety concern. The outdoors is also seen as a place to be physically active, which means that babies who are perhaps not walking yet are again not really seen as being a place for them. These views are reflected in practice. Our survey of outdoor provision in English baby rooms found an absence of natural features such as grass, plants, and trees. Instead, the outdoor spaces provided for babies tend to be artificial, flat, and bounded. We also found an abundance of fake grass. We've provocatively used the metaphor of garden weeds to describe and challenge the idea that babies and toddlers don't belong outdoors and in nature. Next slide, please. I'm going to show you now the first 4 minutes or so of our Tiny Humans Outdoors film. Alice is going to be talking about how she developed the images as a voiceover, and just a little bit of background here. So Alice is a Portuguese Angolan artist based in London, and her practice particularly explores the role of cultural values in all kinds of different areas. So she worked with us to respond to our research findings. And so what you're going to see now is her interpretation of some of our research. Whilst you're watching and listening, we'd invite you to share your thoughts about what it makes you think or feel, and perhaps just do that in the chat as you listen and just take it in. So yeah, just a few moments just to watch.
One of the strongest messages I took from engaging with the research was how outdoor spaces, while often seen as places of freedom and sensory exploration, are also shaped by adult perceptions of risk, control and care. That tension between wonder and worry is something I found particularly powerful. It also became clear how cultural values, safety concerns and practical limitations, such as access to green space, shape young children's opportunities and challenges in how we engage with nature. My approach began with a research provocative metaphor of garden weeds, applied to babies and toddlers under 2. This comparison fascinated me because garden weeds are a very fertile ground for metaphor. Weeds disrupt our cultural fixations on order, control and belonging, making them powerful symbols for rethinking how humans relate to nature and community. To explore this concept, I gathered personal photographs from parents and caregivers, capturing their children in everyday moments, playing, eating, and sleeping across indoor and outdoor settings. These images formed the foundation for digital collages, where I extracted each child from their original environment. This technique worked on 2 levels. First, as a visual metaphor for how society, in this context, often treats the youngest children as out of place, like the weeds, restricting their access to certain spaces. Second, as an act of reclamation, where the child's figure reintegrates into new layered landscapes. By combining interior scenes with natural elements like flowers, leaves and grass, it suggests that nature and the child's place in it should not be confined. From a logistical perspective, one of the main challenges was securing participation from parents, as the project relied on them submitting personal photographs of their children. Understandably, many parents are protective of their children's images, which could lead to a low number of submissions. To address this, the project was designed so that the children's faces will be removed or blurred from the images, offering a level of anonymity that would ideally help parents feel more comfortable taking part. From a conceptual perspective, a significant challenge was the risk of the metaphor of weeds being misunderstood as a negative commentary on children. The intention was to use weeds symbolically to highlight the absence and overlooked presence of babies and toddlers in outdoor environments, drawing an academic interpretation of weeds as resilient, marginal, and resistant to imposed order. However, without careful framing, this metaphor could easily be misinterpreted. To navigate this, drafts of the work were shared with researchers involved in the project to gather feedback, ensuring that the message remained clear, sensitive, and emotionally resonant. This collaboration was essential in avoiding potential misreads and in maintaining the integrity of the project's intent.
So that was intended to be something of a provocation. The full film is available on the website, so we'd be really appreciative of any feedback and thoughts. So do continue to pop them into the chat if you've had any reaction, positive or negative. But what we'd like to talk about now is that why settings matter so much in terms of what they do outdoors with babies. We did a national survey of baby room parents, and we found that almost 1/3 do not have access to a private garden. And we also found that some parents, particularly those working full-time, were really starting to rely on the setting to ensure that their babies and toddlers were getting regular opportunities to spend time outdoors. And there's a couple of quotes on the slide there that just give that kind of deeper reasoning about the lives of parents with very young children. And this is really important because we know that spending time in high quality natural environments, even before birth, is associated with a wide range of health and well-being benefits. So, for example, young children's immune systems can be enhanced through contact with soil. Spending time outdoors can decrease the risk of developing myopia, that's nearsightedness. Spending time in outdoor light in the afternoon can help babies sleep through the night. So given that fact, and given also our finding that there are a range of social factors, which means that some children in particular really struggle to access outdoor spaces, settings play a really, really critical role. And there are a lot of practical constraints and a lack of policy support. And this means that settings need to think about everyday acts of resistance and disruption to dominant understandings about the place of infants and toddlers outside. Next slide, please, Polly. So our question for this part of the project, the second project, was how can we support settings in developing a Froebelian-inspired outdoor and nature-based pedagogy for babies? So we've been working closely with 5 settings in London over the last 2 years. And we started off by going in and visiting the settings and finding out what their baseline provision was like. But we need to sort of backtrack a little bit because you'll have seen from the initial slide that we were talking about babyNENE. And this idea of NENE, or nature engaging and nature enhancing pedagogy, is something that actually came out at the end of our first project. And it was based on our insights about our understanding of Froebel's writing about children and nature. At its heart, it recognises the reciprocal relationship, the interrelationship between children's health and well-being and the health and well-being of the environments that they spend time in. And there are 3 qualities or features of NENE that we really want to bring your attention to. The first is that it's a relational pedagogy. So relationships are at the heart of a Froebelian approach. And the whole, I suppose, aim of NENE is to think about how we can strengthen the relationships between young children, the adults who care for them, and the environments that they spend time in. The second point, again coming from this Froebelian perspective, is that it really moves our focus away from doing what we do outdoors to thinking instead about ways of being outdoors. And so it's making us think about the qualities that we bring to the relationships when we're outdoors. And at its heart, really, one of the qualities that we really recognise in Froebel's writing is attentiveness. And that's attentiveness to the child, thinking about how they are engaging in the outdoor environment, but also attentiveness to the natural environment itself, noticing and developing an ethic of care, really. So it has that sort of two-sided aspect. Next slide, please, Polly. So what we found when we went into our 5 settings is that there are a range of challenges and opportunities that are particularly acute in urban baby room settings. And these words on the screen here are the voices of the educators from those 5 settings, telling us about some of the challenges and opportunities from their perspective. So in terms of the outdoor spaces, they recognised that some of these environments are very challenging. They're often very small. They're often shared between different ages. And as one educator said, it's not very inspiring, is it? But on the other hand, there was a real enthusiasm and desire to know how to bring nature into their outdoor spaces. We also found that getting outdoors was really challenging. Many of the baby rooms were situated on the first or second floor of the building, and it meant that there were practical challenges of getting babies and toddlers outside. At one setting, they used a cot to transport the babies, and so the babies started to kind of know when they were going outside and got very excited. But equally, the routines meant that sometimes it was really challenging to be able to find the time to get the babies outside. And we found that those were real challenges that were having to be navigated every day. Being outdoors was recognised as being good for the babies and also good for the educators. However, there was still more of an emphasis on getting toddlers outside because of that physical perspective that I mentioned earlier. In terms of what they did when they were outside, the outdoor pedagogies, there was a sense of often trying to bring what they were doing inside outside. So it needed quite a lot of setting up. And then this final quote is from a setting which had a surface where when it rained, the rain tended to pool on that surface. And health and safety requirements at that setting meant that they needed to sweep the rain away before the babies were able to go outside. And we found some very interesting sort of tensions between, I guess, the sort of the presence of nature, for example, rain and leaves, and then the health and safety concerns, which meant that often they needed to be removed. So in addition to those kind of shared themes, we recognised that the settings really valued some specific advice and support. And in collaboration with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, each setting was offered 2 half-day visits from an environmental advisor to help them develop their outdoor areas. We also designed an outdoor experience day for educators to support them in developing their practice. The final part of the project involved returning to each of the settings to see what had changed, to see how their outdoor areas had changed, and also to talk to them about how their practice had changed. I'm now going to hand over to Jo, who's going to tell you about how we developed the babyNENE framework and toolkit, and also to tell you a little bit more about how those experiences of these 5 settings were really sort of drawn upon in the development of our toolkit. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to hear about our work. So the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about is our babyNENE framework, because we would like to show you how we've used the Froebelian themes and the ideas that Nicola mentioned to consider our research findings, to consider our work with settings, and to develop this framework and then accompanying resources that we're going to show you to support those caring for very young children. So here we have our framework, and really it's to underpin, to inform the kind of opportunities and practices that we can engage in, both for babies and also for considering what we do with our outdoor areas. And as Nicola said, it was developed through work with a range of experts, baby room educators, setting managers, the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, and then our advisory group of specialists in both pedagogies for babies and outdoor pedagogies. And thinking about those Froebelian themes and ideas, we've taken 4 qualities that you can see through in the middle column. And these are being attentive, nurturing, being responsive, and questioning. And then the framework explains how these 4 qualities can both support babies' engagement with nature and support enhancing the outdoors with natural elements. So, for example, if we look at the quality of being attentive, we are encouraged as adults to attend to what babies are interested in, to follow their lead, and to tune in to natural processes such as the weather, the light, or the seasons. And yet at the same time, if we move over to the right-hand side of the table, the nature enhancing practices, we are encouraged to not regard nature as a mere resource, but instead to consider specific responsibilities, such as sharing with babies ideas about looking after plants and animals within the setting. Then the quality of nurturing encourages us both to nurture babies' interests in natural environments, observing and valuing the connections they make, whilst also at the same time as adults modelling nurturing as we show how to protect and care for all forms of life. Being responsive speaks to considering babies' holistic needs outdoors, valuing more passive ways of being, which facilitate feeling, thinking, and sleeping. And we're also invited to respond to the needs of the more than human in the local environment, becoming familiar with specific needs, creating wild spaces, and increasing biodiversity. And then finally, the 4th quality, questioning. We are encouraged to questioning different cultural ways of engaging with natural elements, questioning our own assumptions, challenging and questioning dominant ideas of who belongs in nature and actually what actually counts as nature. So could I have the next slide, Polly, please? Because what we'd like to show you now, how we took the frame kit and, sorry, the framework, and you're getting ahead of myself, how we took the framework and used it to underpin the toolkit that we went on to develop. The framework that we've just shown you is at the very heart of the babyNENE toolkit. And when I pass on to Polly, she's going to show you the toolkit in much more detail and lots of its features. So the toolkit's aimed at those who care for the youngest children, whether in a formal setting or in a family or in community contexts. And as Nicola was describing earlier, it focuses on both babies' well-being and environmental well-being, because it recognises that the health of these tiny humans is dependent on the health of the environment. And that's why we like the term NENE so much, because we believe, as Nicola said earlier, that it kind of sums up so well this attitude of mutual care and responsibility, both towards babies and towards the natural world. And the toolkit suggests ways to be outdoors with very, very young children. It suggests dispositions to encourage, but what it isn't, it's certainly not a list of activities to be completed. At the same time, it does support the adult to consider in a very practical way small changes that can be made, small steps that can be taken, both to enhance the outdoor environment that babies have access to and the things that the babies can access and engage with when they're outside there in those spaces. slide, please, Polly. Thank you. I thought you would find it useful to know exactly how we reached out to expertise from other people to inform some of the content and the format of the toolkit, really. Nicola's already shared with you the research, some of the research that has informed our putting together of the toolkit. But we were really keen to draw on a range of knowledge and expertise to ensure that it was informed, that it was useful, that it was accessible, and that it spoke clearly to practice. So this slide just shows you some of the knowledge exchange activity that we engaged in to help our ideas about babyNENE to emerge. So you can see in the left-hand column, these are some of the activities we have undertaken, such as the greening project with 5 urban settings. So this is the project that Nicola spoke about at the beginning. And we use the term greening here to describe a strategy of introducing further natural elements into urban environments to increase biodiversity and possibly mitigate some of the problems caused by climate change and pollution. And we also like how it relates to the phrase growing up green that probably many of you will have heard. It's used by many writers to describe a way of providing environments and modelling practices to young children that may lead them to growing up as agents of care to the natural world. I'm quoting Chawla there, 2009. So this greening project enabled us to understand what may or may not be possible for settings. So for example, some settings had snack time outside, which is a lovely idea, whereas others told us that they had to be really careful about attracting vermin, so they didn't see that as a possibility. And then the advisory group that I mentioned, our consultations with them were really important in helping us to articulate our ideas in an accessible way. A highlight of the project was the experiential day that Nicola also mentioned at one of the settings, where a whole range of participants were able to bring their expertise and learn from each other. So, for example, we, at the end of the day, we all noted down what we'd learned from the experience, and I was particularly interested to learn from the practitioners about some of the things that the babies didn't like outside. So one of them talked about babies getting upset when a baby getting upset when they felt the wind on their face. And then the co-construction day developed our understanding of what the toolkit should look like and what should be in it, such as the idea of including short films that Polly's going to tell you about. And finally, a parental survey suggested elements that parents may find helpful. So just before I hand over to Polly, what we do want to emphasise to you is that this is a pilot toolkit, and we will share with you how you can give us feedback on its usefulness and ways it could be enhanced. In addition to this, we will be visiting a handful of settings over the next few months to enable us to put together some case studies, which will also help us gauge the effectiveness of the toolkit in practice. So I'm going to hand you over to Polly now, and she's going to show you how to access the toolkit. I can see there has been some questions about whether people can access it. Yes. So she's going to show you where it is. She's going to show you our Babies Outdoors website and some of the useful resources that you can access there. Thank you, Polly.
Thank you, Jo. It's wonderful to see in the comments that people are asking, can we access the toolkit? The answer is yes, we would love you to access this toolkit. So what I'm going to be talking about is I'm going to be sharing details of where you can find the toolkit, what it contains, how to use it, and some examples of how baby rooms have begun to take a nature engaging and nature enhancing approach to their outdoor spaces. To start with, let me tell you where you can find our babyNENE toolkit. We've set up a website called Babies Outdoors, which you can access via the URL you can see on this slide, babiesoutdoors.co.uk. Here's a screenshot that you can see of our homepage. If you look along the top, you'll see there's links to our website's other pages. Going from left to right, you can see that we have a page where you can download a PDF copy of our toolkit. We have a page that recaps our babyNENE approach, which Jo just introduced. We have a page that contains hyperlinks to all of the research that we've published about babies outdoors, including our Froebel Trust reports, our open access journal articles, a YouTube video of a previous Froebel Trust webinar that Jo and Nicola did in 2022, various blog posts and details of a book chapter too. We've also got some downloadable handouts, some videos of babyNENE in practice, and a link to our free Open University Open Learn course, all of which I'll talk about in a moment, as well as information about who we are and how to contact us. When you've downloaded the toolkit, what you'll see is that it starts with some information about what the toolkit is, why we need it, and what the framework that it's based on looks like, basically summarising the headlines that Jo and Nicola have already shared with you today. It then goes on to talk about how you can use the toolkit by giving you 2 strategies you can use to develop your nature engaging and nature enhancing practices with babies. The first strategy we're suggesting is to review your outdoor environment. You can do this simply by looking at your outdoor environment and identifying what natural elements it already includes. For instance, do you have birds visiting your space? Are there insects around? What about plants, including weeds, or trees or puddles? You can even think about what the weather offers, for instance, in terms of raindrops, shadows, or wind. Doing this will help you to identify where there might be opportunities to green part of your environment, i.e. enhance it with natural elements. To help you to do this, we've included a simple audit in the toolkit where you can think about what homes for nature you might already have and which you might be able to introduce. The list includes things such as bird feeders, bug hotels, wildflowers, potted plants and herb gardens. Of course, what changes you are able to make will depend on the space you have and any resources you need, but please think in terms of small steps, not big changes. Try to ask yourself, how can I add a few more natural elements to the outdoor environment I spend time in with babies? The audit we've produced also asks you to consider how you engage babies with nature. You might find it helpful to think about how frequently babies are taken outside and for how long, and whether this could be increased. You might also find it useful to audit what experiences you provide outdoors for babies, such as eating, sleeping, or growing plants. The second strategy we suggest that you think about is choosing just one of the qualities that feature in our babyNENE framework and focusing on that. For instance, if you're focusing on being attentive, a nature engaging practice could be to support babies to explore fallen leaves by touching and crinkling them with their hands. An attentive nature enhancing practice could be encouraging babies in age appropriate ways to look after plants and animals within the setting. Perhaps babies might watch as practitioners engage in this kind of work, listening to practitioners describe what they're doing and joining in as they are able. Being nurturing in terms of nature engaging might involve not worrying about outcomes outdoors or taking loads of resources out, but simply taking the lead from what babies are interested in, stopping when babies and toddlers are drawn to something and talking about what they can see in the environment. Alternatively, if you focus on being nurturing in terms of a nature enhancing practice, this might involve growing, eating and composting edible plants, involving the babies as much as possible. Being responsive to babies to support their nature engagement could include providing cribs outdoors for babies to crawl into when they feel sleepy. Or being responsive to nature could include thinking about responding to the needs of plants and animals, for instance, by providing food for birds or looking for signs of life in rock pools at the beach. In terms of questioning as a nature engaging practice, you might want to question why a baby might not want to go outdoors and ask their adults if they know why this might be the case. And finally, a questioning nature enhancing practice could involve questioning whether weeds count as nature. Perhaps you'll consider stopping clearing them when they come through the patio area so that the babies can explore them. To help you with those nature engaging and nature enhancing strategies, the toolkit includes some downloadable handouts that our practitioners, advisory group and environmental experts thought were necessary as part of our co-construction day. These include a list of recommended plants for urban settings, which have been chosen because of their suitability for urban environments, as well as the opportunities they offer babies for sensory engagement in all of the different senses. We've also produced a list of recommended books for babies about nature and the natural world, as well as a poster for settings of ideas for nature engaging and nature enhancing practices with babies. We've also created a poster about why being outdoors matters to babies and toddlers, which practitioners told us could be useful to share with parents. You also might find it useful to have a look at our free Open University Open Learn course called Young Children, the Outdoors and Nature. You can find a link to it on our website. It comprises of 8 modules to help you start thinking about babies outdoors. Since it was launched in July 2023, it's been visited over 300,000 times and over 1,200 people have achieved a statement of participation by completing the whole course, which is intended to take about 24 hours to complete. The course features videos from prominent voices in the field of early childhood, like Dr. Maria Cooper, Professor Tina Bruce, Professor Sasha Powell and Professor Jan White, who share their knowledge about babies outdoors and the links we can make to Froebelian principles. We know of one setting where completing this course is a requirement for all new members of staff as part of their commitment to supporting babies to have rich outdoor experiences. We've also produced some short video clips showcasing what babyNENE can look like in practice. Back in November, we visited Bramblewood in Matlock, Derbyshire, where Gemma Chapman, an early years teacher, offers weekly sessions for children and their adults to spend time in and with nature. We took 2 amazing videographers with us who filmed some wonderful instances of babies engaging with nature. And we've grouped these into 4 themes: being in nature together, moving and learning in nature, using our senses in nature, and noticing nature. For each theme, we've got 3 or 4 clips that are around 1.5 minutes long each to share some lovely visual examples of babyNENE in practice with you. We'd like to share one example with you, which we've called Exploring the Woods. I'm going to share this now. Our sound has been a little bit temperamental, so there might be a musical accompaniment, but there's no dialogue, so you're not missing anything if the sound doesn't work.
Literally today, well, last night today.
You get it? You get it? No? Oh dear.
What's in here? What's in here? What's this? Can I get your hand out? There you go.
We think that's just a lovely example of what babyNENE can look like in practice. And you saw that the baby and their grown up exploring the leaves on the trees together, and then going over to that metal green bucket that had herbs in, and you saw that baby being supported to touch those herbs and potentially smell those herbs and feel those herbs for that sensory experience whilst they were exploring the natural world. We've also included in our toolkit some examples of how other settings have embraced babyNENE. These are all examples from urban baby rooms from the research that Nicola introduced you to earlier. And what we want you to take from these examples is that you don't have to make huge changes, just small steps, and just think about what's manageable to you. The quotations on this slide have come directly from baby room practitioners. In our report, we've used pseudonyms for our settings, so I'll refer to the pseudonyms here. In the setting that we called U setting, the baby room lead spoke of how they'd become more responsive to babies' needs outdoors, for instance, by valuing passive ways of being. They said, "We are all so full of do, busy, busy, busy. You've got to be doing this, you've got to be doing that. But actually, you can just lie on the grass and look at the sky." They invested in outdoor mats and cushions, as well as board books about the natural world for babies to engage with outdoors. In the setting that we called fur setting, practitioners thought about how to be a nurturer of babies' interest in the natural environment by planting flowers and herbs. One practitioner said, "We have these planters and we're focusing on herbs. They know now when you touch these leaves, this gives you a good scent on your hands. So they will go there and gently touch it and smell it. That sensory engagement." In the setting we called chestnut setting, the practitioners thought about how they could be responsive to nature itself by fixing a butterfly house and a bird house to an external wall. And they also began replacing artificial plants with real plants. Introducing these elements encouraged butterflies, ladybirds, and moths into the outdoor space. The practitioners also began to question what counted as nature. For instance, one stated, "I found myself pulling up weeds that were going through the astroturf before they saw them. And I'm like, well, why am I doing this? Let's show it to the child. This is actual nature trying to get through." These case studies demonstrate what nature engaging and nature enhancing can look like in the context of an early year setting, and how manageable steps can be taken to further babies' opportunities to engage with nature and to enhance the outdoors with nature. We hope that you're able to use our toolkit to think about what babyNENE might look like in the context of your own outdoor space by reviewing your outdoor environment and focusing on those 4 qualities of being attentive, responsive, nurturing, and questioning when it comes to babies outdoors. I'm now going to hand over to Jo to draw together our concluding thoughts.
Thank you, Polly. And thank you, everyone who's adding comments to the chat. We're really going to enjoy reading those back afterwards. So, first I want to say thank you very much for listening to our presentation and taking an interest in our work and the toolkit. And there are many people we would like to say thank you to for getting us to this stage in our thinking, and many of them are here this evening, so a big thank you to all those people, including the Froebel Trust, who have generously funded our work, and the Open University, who are continuing to fund it now. Please do get involved by exploring the website, using the toolkit, and giving us feedback using there's a QR code on the second page of the PDF of the toolkit, or there is a link on the website homepage. So we would like to take any questions or comments that you may have now, but before we do that, first let's close the presentation with the key voice rather of the practitioners reflecting on using the toolkit. So we have Charlotte here. The 2 practitioners here have been so supportive that we have really appreciated. So Charlotte's saying, "I feel that the toolkit And the focus on the quality words will really give educators time to reflect on their current practice and think about how they can expand and improve their knowledge and practices even more. And Gemma, also so supportive of our work, is putting words on it for me and making me think, how can I facilitate this? And then finally, let's give the last word to Alice, our amazing visual artist, who said, the project made me think differently about accessibility and presence. It challenged me to consider how we might reimagine public and natural spaces to include the very young, not just as future users, but as people with their own embodied experiences in the present moment. Thank you very much, everybody, and I'm going to hand you back to Kayla now. I think that's right.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you guys so much for sharing your research. It's absolutely incredible. I have a million questions just scribbled down onto my paper now that I'm going to want to ask, but I want to start off by saying I really loved the images in the first video you shared. It really made me reflect on where babies are present in nature and also where they're not present, and how we're creating spaces for them as educators to flourish or not flourish. So I really loved that, and how it made me think there. To get us started with the Q&A, I'm just going to put out one question and give everyone a chance to maybe add some of their questions to the Q&A box down at the corner. That's where I'll be looking to share your questions with our wonderful researchers. So I just wanted to start off by saying I really was thinking about the questioning quality. It really resonated with me throughout the presentation. I'm wondering what values and practices stand out to you, having gone through your research process, that are really helpful to question when engaging with babies in nature.
Nicola, would you like to go first?
Yes. So I suppose one of the things that really impacted me when I was involved in sort of reading other people's research as part of the literature reviews that we did was some work that had been done actually in other countries and contexts. And it just really sort of made me recognize how cultural values about nature and what we think about nature, its role in our lives, and how different that is across different cultures and communities. That was something that I couldn't get out of my head once I'd read that and started to think about it. And since then we've engaged with some researchers in other countries. I'm thinking particularly of one in Brazil who's doing some really interesting work looking at issues of race and inclusion in outdoor environments with very young children. And so that questioning really of who belongs outside and noticing who's not there as well as who is. So I think sometimes like the gaps or the absences are really important in research as a whole. It's not just about what data tells you, but it's also kind of what voices are missing. And so there are so many voices missing when we think of the youngest children. So, particular groups of children. So I think questioning who belongs, and also the questioning of what is nature. And it was really interesting because we did have examples, as I said, like the rain is a really interesting one, that in practice they would set up water play, but if it rained, the rain that came down as part of the weather was seen as a problem. And it really has made me question sort of, what is nature? And that lovely quote just now about, letting the weeds grow up through the fake grass or the astroturf. It's not always, we're not always talking about kind of, green fields and trees. Sometimes we're talking about, nature coming through in tiny ways. And that's why being attentive is so important. Sorry, that was a bit of a long-winded answer, but I don't
No, that's gorgeous. That's absolutely gorgeous. I think that I really love the idea of thinking who's present and who's being able to access nature, and then also what are we allowing to count in earlier settings? We have a lot to think about as practitioners in terms of health and safety and things like that, but pausing to question, can this rain stay? Can the weeds stay? I think that's gorgeous. We have quite a few questions in the Q&A box, so I'm going to get going on that. We have Florence who asked, do ratios allow for educators to be as attentive as required when babies engage with natural elements? Is it a barrier? Is it easier for one adult to supervise many babies when they're indoors with quote unquote safe toys? So questions around ratios outside there.
And I mean, it's a great question, and I think it kind of the question illustrates why we needed to have this knowledge exchange activity with a whole range of experts. We're, the three of us, we're not experts in working in a baby room and being outdoors with babies. That's not our expertise. So our learning has very much come from practitioners. And I suppose, I can see from the comments that there are practitioners who are doing this kind of work. I don't know if we can, I don't know if Charlotte, I think you might be here. I don't know if you would like to say something. Don't want to put you on the spot, but or Emma.
Oh, I'm not sure if Charlotte would be able to unmute.
I think audio.
Okay.
Okay, right, because it's webinar setup. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Jo, as well, that there's something about leadership here as well, isn't there?
Yes.
That's definitely something that we found. So I think that it's clearly challenging. I think that the answer is it is very challenging, particularly in the policy context of England. And what we have found, though, that there are examples where strong leadership has made it possible. So it's not that it's easy, but we've definitely found many examples of actually where, it's been a very sort of proactive finding out, this is good for babies, therefore we need to do it. We need to find a way to do it safely. So you start from the point of benefit, and then you work out how to manage the risks. And that was kind of the message that we got from some of those, really inspiring leaders that we have met.
That's gorgeous. I think it's really easy sometimes for us to start from kind of the negative side of things. So I love that example of starting from what benefits babies here and how can we put that into place. I think that's lovely.
And just see, Charlotte said she can unmute, I think. So I don't know if
Charlotte, gorgeous.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I know. So it was on the ratios, wasn't it? Sorry. So we free flow. So all of our babies can free flow. All of our children can free flow from the inside to the outside. So our staff just deploy themselves where the children want to go. So if, of course, in the baby rooms, it's a 1-to-3 ratio. So if there's 3 children outside, or if there's 1 child outside, there's a member of staff out there, and the staff will just go with the children where they need to go. But then obviously the staff where they want to go will also plan if they're taking the children to the forest school field or if they're going off site. And then, of course, if they're walkers or non-walkers, and then they'll plan to take the buggies. So we have double, triple buggies, and we'll push the babies to the local park, or we'll go to the woods. And if they're transitioning over to the forest school field, they may take some buggies, or if they've got some capable walkers, we have walking rings. But yes, we of course run on a 1-to-3 ratio, which is the government standard, the Ofsted standard, and then we have supernumerary students wherever possible, that are always great as extra pair. We love that in all of our rooms, just as extra pair of hands for extra cuddles, etc. But also, of course, when you are outside and if you are doing a little bit more risky play and they're climbing, etc., it's great to have those extra hands and eyes just to increase those ratios, so that if you have got some that are going, even our little ones, and they love the bikes, they'll just be walking and they'll be better on the bikes than they are at walking. So, having those extra staff is definitely important. But yeah, I know that I think ratios is something that comes up all the time. And I think if you are coming from upstairs to downstairs, etc., that's something that you would need to take into consideration, of course. But I think we are very lucky in our setup that they literally can step out the door and they're in their garden.
That free flow is absolutely gorgeous and something that I know a lot of people envy sometimes in their settings. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Charlotte. I have another question from Angela. She's a childminder and she really believes in the importance of the outdoors. However, she has two babies aged 12 months who really don't like outdoor play and they have a hard time once they've been outside for a bit. Do you have any tips for her?
Polly, do you want to answer, or I don't want to put you on the spot?
No, I will answer. Yeah, I suppose kind of two things come to mind. The first thing is one of the takeaways from our experience day, where we asked practitioners to kind of reflect on what the headlines were from that experience day. And one of the takeaways was it's about moments, not minutes, about having, you don't need to be outside for a certain amount of time for it to have a benefit. Just to think about what moments you're creating outdoors. So I suppose the advice I would be that it doesn't need to necessarily be for a long period of time. And another piece of advice I think I would give is that it's also possible to bring natural elements indoors, and so as a step towards familiarity, that might be a good kind of initial step in terms of things like herbs or fallen leaves or things like that, in order to get that sensory experience and appreciation of textures and smells in somewhere that feels familiar.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Polly. I noticed some comments in the chat around parents, and so I wanted to sort of bring those together to form a question for people who might not have had a chance to pop it in the Q&A. So some families may have some hesitancy around the outdoors. They may worry about their babies getting sick if they're outside for too long or if it's too cold. I'm wondering if you can kind of offer some advice on how we can help families learn more about the benefits of a nature engaging and mutually enhancing pedagogy.
Polly, I sort of feel this is you again, but I don't.
Okay, thank you, Nicola.
You did give the fantastic fact sheet.
So one of that is exactly what some of the practitioners spoke about when we visited those 5 urban settings in London, that there was sometimes reticence from parents to want their children to go outdoors because of misconceptions that it would make them unwell, and parents would have to take time off work because the babies would be not able to attend their early year setting. So we understand that. And that's why, as part of the toolkit, we created kind of a poster of why being outdoors matters to babies and toddlers, because that's something that our practitioners said would be useful to signpost parents to kind of offer that reassurance that it is important to spend time outdoors in terms of risk taking, in terms of sleep, in terms of kind of health benefits. Nicola already spoke about kind of the benefits to eyesight and things like that. So I suppose it's sharing information with parents about why going outdoors shouldn't be kind of an added extra. It's something that's really important for very young children.
Yeah. Yeah, sharing how and why it's foundational to kind of your ethos in a setting can be super helpful. And then I have a few questions around being able to get involved in the project going forward. Do you have any sort of advice for how people can connect with babies outdoors or potentially even being part of this particular iteration of the project?
You want me to go, Nicola? Yeah, well, we really hope people will look at the website. We hope that they will have a go at using the toolkit and give us some feedback. That's really important to us. On the survey that I said before, you can access via the toolkit, and there's a QR code or link on the website. You can leave your details if you would like us to contact you. You may be in a setting and you may think, oh, well, we'd like to be involved in a case study. So yes, please. And also, just beyond the survey, you can contact us via the website anyway. Please give us your comments, you know, give us your feedback, let us know what you've been doing. We've also, I think on the, oh, there I can see on the slide in front of me, you've got our contact details if you would like to contact us by email. So yes, please do stay in touch, because once we've finished, we're kind of working on the impact phase of this project now, the dissemination and impact phase of this project. The research phase is kind of completed. So, you know, we are looking about what next, you know, what are we going to, where are we going to go with babyNENE? How are we going to, you know, let it fly? Where are we going to go with it next? So yes, do please keep in touch with us and let us know what your thoughts are.
Fabulous. I think those are all of the questions that we have. We do have a question about the QR code that might have been up at the start, but I'm hoping that maybe Mariana could answer that one in the Q&A. But I believe, oh, we have one more actually from Amelia. She says, do you do work with 2 to 4-year-olds on being outdoors?
Want me to go again, or colleagues? Yeah. Well, and there's the question. What an important question. And you know, the answer is no, because we noted that a lot of people were doing that, you know, fantastic work. You know, some people have been on our advisory group, people like Jan White, who's, you know, we filmed her as part of our Open Learn course. So there's a lot of people doing really fantastic work in that area. But the babies were missing. The babies were missing. And I have to say, it was actually Sasha that got us involved in, you know, going back to the olden days when we worked with Sasha and she'd done that amazing baby room project, and just having a conversation over a cup of coffee and saying, you know, what else is there to find out? But, you know, what didn't you find out? And her saying, well, actually, it was about babies. You know, we didn't really find out what babies were doing outdoors. I hope I'm not misquoting you there, Sasha. But this idea that they were invisible, the information wasn't there. So no, the short answer is no. We're very much focused on promoting that practice with those very young children. But we do recognise lots of an amazing work that's going on with the older age group.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for sharing your research with us.